Om Jnanatirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurin Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
In the beginning of the Nectar of Devotion, it is, towards the beginning, it's stated about the various stages of sinful reaction. That is, bija, kuta, phalonmukha and prarabdha, various stages. And it's said that the root cause of all sin is ignorance. The root cause of suffering is ignorance. Now, elsewhere we read that the basic cause of conditional life is forgetfulness of and envy of Krishna. As stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna Pulise Jivanadi Bahimokate Mayatari Dehesham Sharaduk. Lord Chaitanya states that due to forgetting Krishna, the living being is inimical towards Krishna since time immemorial. And for that reason, Maya awards the conditioned living soul suffering of material life. So the root cause of suffering in this material world is ignorance. And if we look even deeper than that, we'll find that what is that ignorance that is brought about by forgetfulness of Krishna. Forgetfulness of Krishna is both the cause and the very manifestation of ignorance. It is ignorance. So Krishna very kindly tries to rescue the conditioned souls by giving them Vedic knowledge. And all the Vedas, all the Vedic knowledge is meant for leading the conditioned souls back to Krishna by reawakening their knowledge of Krishna. However, conditioned souls being conditioned, even when they take to study of Vedic knowledge, they very often misunderstand it. We often have the experience when we're discussing with people that they don't think in a logical way at all. You must have had this experience when you're speaking to people and the things they say demonstrate that their thinking function is not in proper order at all. One example, I remember, I was speaking to a person and I was giving an example that we shouldn't be led by blind people. I was giving the example that we should be led by someone who can see the right way to go. And then he said, well, what have you got against blind people? Why are you discriminating against them? And how do you discuss with such a person? It's so stupid. And then they think that you can't discuss with them, and they think that due to their intellectual brilliance they've defeated you. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gave the example that in a village of fools, the biggest fool was thought to be very intelligent. So they thought, he's the greatest scholar of all. So they thought that we should call a great scholar to discuss with him and show how great is our fool number one. So they called the great scholar to their village. And the scholar, upon meeting the fool number one, he asked him in Sanskrit, he said, Kastvam, who are you? So this Pandit, his knowledge of Sanskrit was limited to the alphabet only. And Ka is the first letter of the consonant. So when he said Kastvam, he didn't know what he said, but he then said Kastvam, the second letter of the alphabet, Gastvam, the third letter, Gastvam. And this way he went through the whole alphabet. And the actual scholar thought, this man is such a fool that, what am I going to discuss with him? So without saying anything else, he just left the village. And all the fools, they thought, you just see it. He defeated him. That's why it's said that it's better not to argue with a fool, because other people, they may not be able to tell the difference. So this scriptures, they're actually meant for intelligent people. In the human form of life, there is sufficient intelligence for understanding spiritual subject matter. Now, we of course, as followers of the Vedic literature, we claim that this is the topmost theistic scriptural field, scriptural line, the Vedic knowledge. But everyone will say that, Christians will say, well, the Bible is the best, and Muslims will say the Quran is the best. But as Srila Prabhupada pointed out, this Vedic knowledge is giving more knowledge of God. That in the Bible it may be said there is God, but there really isn't very much information about it. So that preliminary information about God Himself is being given by Krishna in this Bhagavad Gita. And it is presented not simply in a dogmatic style, but with understanding of who God is. Not simply to say, well, He is great and He is the Creator, and that's about it, but much more detailed knowledge. As Srila Prabhupada used to say, it is not enough to say simply that God is great, but we should understand how He is great, how He acts through His different energies. Or actually, He acts, He doesn't act, because everything goes on simply by His wish. Natasya karyam karanam cha vidyate natat samaschabhyati kascha drishyate parasya shakti vividhaiva shruyate swabhaviki jnana balakriya cha. He has no work to do. He is the source of everything, and everything is going on under His direction. But personally, He has nothing to do. There is no one seen who is equal to or greater than Him. He has many different energies which are variously described, which work automatically under His, even without Him personally overseeing every detail of their direction. All knowledge, all strength, all activity, these are all the energies of the Lord. So this is this verse I quoted, that's from Upanishad, Sritashvatara Upanishad. And all the points of the Upanishads are given here in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Srimad Bhagavad Gita is a summary of all the Upanishads. And Bhagavad Gita is also known as Gita Upanishad. Now, in this purport to this very important verse, Srila Prabhupada has given quotations from various Vedic literatures to substantiate the points which Krishna is making in this verse. Specifically the point that Krishna is making, that He is the source of everything. There are many great and powerful persons within the universe, but Krishna is the source of them all. Sometimes people with limited vision, they take some demigod to be supreme. But far greater than the demigods, who are far greater than us, the demigods are far greater than us, but far greater than the demigods is Krishna. So Krishna is presenting this knowledge of Himself here in Bhagavad Gita. He wants us to understand this, because the natural result of understanding Krishna's supremacy is that one will become attracted to worship Him. It is possible, if one is very demoniac by nature, that upon hearing of Krishna's greatness, one will not want to worship Him. Persons who are highly demoniac, when they hear of Krishna's greatness, they become more envious. They try to deny Krishna's greatness. And we see that many demons, they have the ambition to kill Krishna. They don't want to accept His supremacy. They want to prove that He is not a superhuman being, He's not a supramundane being by killing Him. But of course they're never successful. Yesterday we were discussing a little bit about Mayavad. So Mayavad, that is also, it's similar to the demoniac attempt to disprove Krishna's supremacy. The Mayavadis, they don't want that Krishna will be supreme. They don't want to accept this fact. So instead of trying to physically kill Him, they try to intellectually pretend that He doesn't exist, by saying that, well, everything is illusion, therefore Krishna is also an illusion, Krishna also doesn't exist. Or they say, well, Krishna, He comes, He's a transformation of the mode of goodness. In this way, they also try to make Krishna subordinate to matter. Avajananti mang mudha manushim tanamashritam param bhavam ajananto What is the last thing? Param Brahma Jananti.
Mama Bhuta.
Mama Bhuta Maheshwaram. They do not, the rascals, when they see Krishna, they deny that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They want to rationalize him into being some kind of a human being. Or maybe they'll accept him as a a very special kind of human being. But that he is supreme and that we are eternally subordinate to him, they do not want to accept. So this statement that Krishna is making, that I am the source of everything, is in another way saying that I am supreme. So it is a challenge to the demons, the atheists and the Mayavadis. And this statement is a source of great pleasure to the devotees who in great love accept the fact Krishnat param kimapi tadvamaham na jane, that there is no principle, there is no entity in existence that is higher than Krishna. Yasmat param na param asti kinchit. There is no other being that is higher than Krishna. So devotees understanding this, then they engage themselves in devotional service with full faith that yes, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yesterday a question came up about doubts in Krishna and the process of bhakti. So doubts can be cleared by hearing about Krishna from the right source. Krishna explains himself in Bhagavad Gita. And he explains himself because Arjuna was bewildered regarding his duty and regarding his existential position. Arjuna didn't know how to act, what he should do, because he wasn't fixed in correct understanding of his constitutional position as a servitor of Krishna. So we are all in this position. We don't know how to act because we're not fixed in knowledge of who is Krishna and what is our relationship with him. So, therefore Krishna gives this knowledge in Bhagavad Gita so we can be free from ignorance. And it's really up to the individual to be intelligent enough to accept that. Now this spiritual intelligence, this comes not as a result of genetic endowment or not as a result of increasing one's brain power by studying in a university. But that intelligence comes according to our attitude. Krishna gives intelligence by which we may understand him if we have a desire to serve him. As Krishna states here, just 2 verses after the verse we read today. What is that verse? Can anyone say? Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam tadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. So Krishna says that those who worship me with love, I give them the intelligence by which they can come to me. But even before one is engaging, here, first of all, Krishna says that those who understand me as supreme, they engage in my devotional service. And then Krishna goes on to say that because they worship me in that way, I give them the intelligence by which they can come to me. But even the preliminary intelligence to accept Krishna as supreme, that is awarded by Krishna to someone who is of pure motive. This is why Srila Prabhupada writes that advancement in Krishna consciousness depends on the attitude of the performer. This one sentence from the preface of the Nectar of Instruction is the key to understanding advancement in devotional service. And if we want to serve Krishna, Krishna will help us. And if we want to make a show of serving Krishna while not actually surrendering to him, then Krishna will help us also to make a show, but we won't get love of Krishna. Now, here in the verse, Krishna refers to buddha bhavasamanditaha, learned persons who worship Krishna. Prabhupada is translated bhavasamanditaha, with great attention. That means with great sincerity and purpose.
Sincerity, do it.
With great sincerity of purpose. Now, in the verse translation, the Prabhupada has given a slightly different, at least in the English, it comes out, it's slightly different to that in the word-for-word translation. Prabhupada translates, worship me with all their hearts. They worship me with all their hearts. So, worship with all one's heart gives the sense of, with great feeling. In Russian you say like that also? I give my heart to you. It means that I have great feeling for you. I love you. Also, in English, for instance, if someone does a sloppy job, he's given a task to do, but he doesn't do it very well, we say, oh, his heart wasn't in it. So, the worshipping with all the heart, this is Prabhupada's translation of this word bhava, which is a well-known word in Bhakti, which means generally it's understood to mean with feeling. Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavita Matihi Kriyatang Yadi Kato Pilapyate Tatra Lolyam Apimulyam Ekalam Janma Koti Sukritayana Labhyate. This verse means that Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada translated this as Krishna consciousness, that Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhava, that means if one's matihi, if one's consciousness is attracted towards the rasa, the exchange, and the bhava, the feelings of Krishna Bhakti. So if that is available somewhere, if it is possible to obtain in any place, anyhow, one should certainly aspire to do so. The only price to attain that is a very strong desire to do so. Whereas simply performing mundane pious activities over many lifetimes, that in itself cannot give us Krishna consciousness. So the price to obtain Krishna consciousness is strong desire. So sometimes this statement is misunderstood and taken in a very light way. That Rupa Goswami says we only need to have a strong desire. And on this basis, some so-called devotees, they discount all of the other statements that Rupa Goswami has given. Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and Upadeshamrita has given so many instructions on how to attain devotional service. So his statement that intense greed is the only qualification to attain bhakti does not nullify all the rest of his instructions. Rather, that strong desire or that feeling for Krishna, that can be kindled by, you know the word kindle? It means brought about. It literally means to bring a fire to life. Can be brought about by following the process of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, as described particularly by Rupa Goswami Prabhupada in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So that in that Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, a devotee cultivates knowledge of Krishna and simultaneously develops feelings for Krishna by chanting about him, serving him in so many different ways. So in the beginning one is enjoined to understand Krishna through Bhagavad Gita and gradually through Srimad Bhagavatam, various cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. Now we may think, well, if bhava, or the feelings which are preliminary to and also attendant to the stage of prem, the ultimate stage of love of God, if that is the ultimate goal, then why not just cultivate feelings for Krishna? Why try to cultivate knowledge of Krishna as the supreme, especially considering that in the highest stages of Krishna consciousness, that mood of awe and reverence, considering Krishna as the supreme, is considered an obstacle to Vraja Bhakti or devotional service on the level of the inhabitants of Vrindavan. So we should understand that this Vraja Bhakti, it's not a very cheap thing. It's not obtainable simply by whimsically desiring it. It is not that just by waving one's hand and saying, well, I don't care for this Bhagavad Gita, that you can automatically, just by saying like that, one can come to a position higher than that even of Uddhava, who is the topmost devotee outside Vraja. And if one foolishly attempts to do so, he won't end up with Vraja Bhakti, he'll end up with some imitation of that. We understand from the Srimad Bhagavatam that even the inhabitants of Vrindavan, they also know that Krishna is God. Sometimes they're aware of that and sometimes not. Even when they are aware of it, their feelings towards Krishna remain that of, oh, he's our young boy or he's our friend. Their affection towards him is not conditioned by knowledge of his opulences. The problem for us in our conditioned stage is that we haven't really developed our affection for Krishna, hardly at all, what to speak of to the level of that of the inhabitants of Vrindavan. Therefore we are enjoined to undertake the standard process of understanding Krishna, becoming fixed in his service, and then gradually making advancement towards the highest goal. In other words, it's not that we're not aiming to serve Krishna or to attain the highest level of Krishna consciousness, but our method of approach should always be one of great humility, understanding what is our position and making gradual progress. And by the grace of our great Vaishnava Acharyas, we do have information of the highest goal to be achieved. And we do have information of how to gradually advance towards that goal. We should be very careful not to be misled by our own minds or by the propaganda of others to try to take a shortcut. There is no shortcut to attain Krishna Prem. Krishna Prem, or pure love of Krishna, is based on selfless devotional service to Krishna. If one attempts to approach the platform of Krishna Prem while still harboring so many selfish desires, then that will not be successful. That is why it's so important in the beginning to so clearly understand our position as servant. If we start trying to imagine what it's like to be a gopi without having developed the proper mode of service, then this will not be pleasing to Krishna. That is an unauthorized approach. Because without imbibing that mood of full service and full surrender, then that means that we're taking Krishna as another object of our sense gratification. We like to hear about Krishna and the gopis, but for our own sensual gratification, not for developing the service mood to Krishna. So it is better to approach Krishna consciousness very carefully, in a pragmatic manner, being realistic about our actual situation and how to advance.
What's the last part?
Pragmatically and realistically, in order to understand our position and how to advance. We better be cautious and realistic. Just like in this songbook, in this Vaishnava songbook, there are a collection of songs. So it is better to concentrate on singing those songs which are relevant to our actual standard of advancement. I mean, there are songs there also which are more suitable for devotees who have already attained the higher levels of Krishna consciousness. But if we mostly like to sing those songs only, it suggests that we haven't understood what is the proper path of advancement in Krishna consciousness. It is better for us, it's more appropriate for us to sing songs like those beginning Gauranga Balite Hobe, Gopinath Mama Nivedana Shuno, these kind of songs. We can Of course, we can talk about the gopis and so many things, but that doesn't mean that the gopis accept us. We shall look to see who is advancing in devotional service by their sincere desire to serve the mission of the acharyas. There are devotees who like to become a Babaji in Vrindavan or something like that, but Prabhupada, he wasn't very impressed by this at all. Prabhupada was looking for the service mood. Who is prepared to serve? Once Prabhupada was on a morning walk and some devotees kept on asking Prabhupada questions about the gopis, and he would just say yes, no. He wouldn't elaborate on any answers. Prabhupada didn't seem to be very pleased by this question. Then one devotee said to Prabhupada, Prabhupada, we're distributing your books for your pleasure, and we're trying to distribute 100 big books each daily for your pleasure. Prabhupada stopped, turned towards that devotee and smiled a very big smile. And Prabhupada said, yes, this is the real devotee who simply tries to serve the mission of his spiritual master. So we may wonder why it is that Prabhupada didn't seem to be very, very happy with questions about the gopis. Prabhupada has come from the spiritual world to teach about Krishna. And Krishna is always with the cowherd boys and girls. So why wasn't Prabhupada very enthusiastic to discuss this? There may be various reasons for this. Generally we see that Prabhupada is very interested to push on the preaching of Krishna consciousness, and especially the distribution of his books, because that is the mission of the acharyas, to give people knowledge of Krishna. First of all, people have to know who is Krishna. Mostly people don't even know there is any God, and if there is, they don't know he's Krishna. So Prabhupada wanted to give this knowledge of Krishna through his books, and he wanted his disciples to take up that mission. And he didn't want them to become artificially diverted into topics which they were not ready for, actually. So some may think, well, I'm ready to hear about I'm ready to discuss the gopis. I'm already practicing Krishna for so many years. But that we shall have to see. It's not just a matter of imagining it. And even if one is on such an advanced platform, that's not for general discussion, even among the body of devotees. Another point is that this preaching and distribution of books, that is Gopi Leela, as manifested in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. The gopis have come and they've taken the form of preachers in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement, just like the 6 Goswamis. So these are their pastimes in Chaitanya Leela. So one who takes part in those pastimes of distributing the books which are given to us by the previous acharyas, by Srila Prabhupada, they are taking part in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement. So that highly elevated stage of Krishna consciousness is certainly to be attained, but in gradual steps and not artificially. And I'm repeatedly stressing this point, because I'm seeing that there's an increasing tendency to adopt this kind of sahajiya mood even within our society. Of course, it's not that discussion of Radha, Krishna and the gopis is to be wholly banned from ISKCON. That is not correct. But at the same time, we should understand that more important for us are these 4 major books of Krishna consciousness, namely Gita, Bhagavad, Chaitanya Charitamrita and Nectar of Devotion. And this gradual, cautious approach to understanding Krishna that is recommended by our great Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, and by previous Acharyas also. What's the time? 9:16? Yeah. Okay, so I'll finish here. If there are any questions, they can be written down and given this evening, this afternoon.
You're not taking questions?
No. I can take them. Alright, I can take 1 or 2, I guess, if they're about the class. If they're concerning the class. Otherwise, other questions can come. Yes. Even Krishna himself can't fully understand his own position. That statement is given there to stress how the greatness of Krishna and how he is far beyond the cognizance of even the greatest personalities of this material world. Practically speaking, we see that Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva may temporarily, apparently totally forget Krishna's position also. Just like Lord Brahma stole the calves and cowherd boys of Krishna, thinking him to be an ordinary boy. And Lord Shiva fought with Lord Krishna for the sake of Balnasura. So their illusion was temporary, but it was there. You say it again. That I also mentioned in the class, that one has to go through. The whole process of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti given by Rupa Goswami Prabhupada is to awaken that desire. Okay, one more question. Seems like he's, built in the answer to the question. Seems like he's built in the answer to the question. It's like it's a statement made in the form of a question. Did everyone hear the question? I don't think so. There's a lot of talk about Raganuga Bhakti these days. I'd rather approach it from the other side, as Prabhupada did. Put the emphasis on service. If we have the strong desire to serve, that in itself, that is the antecedent to Raganuga Bhakti. Antecedent means the precursor, that which comes before. That which gives rise to. Now this Raganuga Bhakti mixed up with a whimsical approach is just nonsense, that's all. If we develop a strong desire to serve, that in itself is rag or attachment. Prabhupada several times said that if we follow the process he has given, we will go back to Godhead. Prabhupada once said, if you chant 16 rounds and follow the program I've given you, you will go back to Godhead in this life. I guarantee it. Minimum 16 rounds. Just try to do something to serve this mission. Everything will develop in due course of time. There's no need of anything artificial.